Easter is something worth celebrating because it's a day that reminds us of something amazing that God did to show us that He loves us and wants to be in a relationship with us no matter what. I bet you're asking, what exactly am I talking about? Well, at Easter, we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. The word resurrection means that Jesus died and came back to life, and that's something worth celebrating. Well, the first reason why it's cool is how often does someone die and come back to life? Second reason, it means that death is defeated. And the third reason is it means that nothing can separate us from God's love. No sin, no mistake, no misstep, no decision. Because of Jesus and what He did for us at Easter, we know that we are loved, accepted, and forgiven by God no matter what. Now maybe you're like, cool story, bro, but I don't see how Jesus coming back to life has anything to do with me or my life. I mean, how is it even possible for God to love me no matter what? If that's how you feel, then I'd say that I totally understand you. I have felt that way before too, and honestly, sometimes I still do. Even though I believe in God and know how much He loves me, I also know that I'm not perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes, and because of that, it's hard to feel like I'm really loved, accepted, and forgiven by God no matter what. But the truth is, big or small, our mistakes have a way of making us feel like after what we've done, no one could actually love or accept us. No one could truly forgive us, especially not God. But the good news is where Easter comes in. All that stuff about Jesus dying for our sins, offering us forgiveness, the resurrection, making a new way for us to be close to God forever. That's something that's powerful, and the change means everything. To help us see what I'm talking about, let's look at an encounter Jesus had in the New Testament, the part of the Bible that was written after He came to earth. The encounter was with a guy named Peter, one of Jesus' closest friends and followers during His ministry. So Peter was a fisherman who completely left his life behind to follow Jesus. He eventually became one of the leaders in the early church and shared the message and hope of Jesus with others. So you'd probably look at that guy, Peter, and think he pretty much had it all together. No mistakes, no mess-ups, nothing to keep him from feeling loved, accepted, and forgiven by God, right? Slow your roll, not so fast. Peter was also known for making some pretty big mistakes. He had a way of acting first and thinking later, which turned into the perfect recipe for major mess-ups in his life. And one of the biggest happened right around Easter. As Jesus was nearing the end of His life, He knew what was coming. He knew He was going to be captured and killed on the cross. He knew that this meant a lot of potential pain and danger for His followers, including Peter. So when Jesus, their leader, was arrested and taken to be killed, of course, they'd be in danger for being taken, just like he was. And Peter, well, he promised to stand by Jesus to the death. But when it came down to it and Jesus was actually arrested, what did Peter do? He denied ever knowing Jesus. Not once, not twice, but 3 times that night. Oof, talk about messing up. I can't imagine coming back from that. After Jesus' death, Peter and the other disciples weren't sure what to do. Their friend, their teacher, had been killed. They were left alone, afraid. In Peter's case, guilty. But then that amazing thing we celebrated Easter happened. Jesus rose from the dead. He came back to life. And one of the first things He did was seek out His friends, including Peter. After Jesus' resurrection, His friends actually went back to their old lives. So Peter went back to being a fisherman. One night when the disciples were out fishing with no luck, someone from shore called to them. To the disciples' surprise, it was Jesus. Peter actually dove into the water and swam to the shore just to see Him. Now remember one of the last exchanges Peter had with Jesus. Peter denied knowing Him in his last moments alive. Because of that, you might think that Jesus greeted Peter here with less than a warm welcome. But look at what happened. Jesus gave Peter a chance to right his wrongs. How many times did Peter deny knowing Jesus? 3. How many times did Jesus give Peter the chance to show that He loved him? 3. That right there is pretty incredible. I think Jesus knew the guilt Peter must have been carrying around. I think He knew that Peter probably felt like his failures kept him from God's love or His forgiveness. But here, Jesus extended not 1, not 2, but 3 chances for Peter to make it right, to be forgiven. And not just that, Jesus wanted Peter to continue to have a place in God's story. So often, I think we feel our own mistakes or failures not only keep us from God's love, but they keep us from they keep him from wanting to use us for big, important things in the world. But when Jesus asked Peter to take care of the sheep here, he wasn't talking about real sheep. He was talking about his followers, other Christians who would one day come to know and follow Jesus too. That's a huge job. And it's one that Jesus offered Peter because he loved him, believed in him, and knew that his failures weren't the end of his story. And I want you to know that the same is true for you. Your mistakes, your mess-ups, don't disqualify you from God's love. They don't keep you from being close to him or even being used to do great things for him. Because of Jesus' death and resurrection that we celebrate at Easter, you are forgiven. You are free to be loved by God no matter what, and that is something to celebrate. Easter reminds us we're forgiven no matter what. What I love about this story is the way that it demonstrates God's love for us when we make mistakes. Jesus didn't move away from Peter when he failed. Instead, Jesus came to him, and the same is true for us. God moved towards us in the middle of our mistakes, offering forgiveness and a chance to start again. So today, during this Easter season, I want you to think about what you feel is keeping you from God's love and forgiveness. Is it one bad choice? Is it a series of mistakes? Is it a secret nobody knows about? Whatever it is, I want you to know that because of Jesus and that thing that he did for you, nothing can separate you from God's love. Why? Because of Easter. Easter reminds us that we're forgiven no matter what.